Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss this story. It's a tale of betrayal, greed, and revenge that will leave you questioning everything about family. My name is Isla Hawthorne, I'm 27 years old, and I grew up in a household that everyone admired from the outside. My father, Sebastian Hawthorne, was a man of immense power in the real estate world, a man whose decisions could change entire towns overnight. Our family mansion in Connecticut wasn't just a home, it was the crown jewel of his empire. Marble floors, imported chandeliers, sprawling gardens, libraries with rare first-edition books, it was more palace than house. I had an older brother, Gideon, 32, and a younger sister, Liora, 24. Gideon was ambitious to a fault, believing that birth order automatically granted authority. Liora was restless, always seeking freedom from our father's expectations. And me. I wanted to protect the memories of my mother, who had passed away when I was 16. Everything changed the day my father died. It was a bitter winter morning. Snow covered the roof of the mansion like a thick blanket, icicles hanging from the balconies like frozen knives. I sat at his bedside, holding his frail hand. His voice was weak, yet his eyes remained sharp and calculating. Isla, the mansion, only the one who proves worthy shall inherit it. Remember that, he whispered. And then he was gone. The funeral was grand, as expected. Politicians, business magnates, and socialites filled the pews. Cameras flashed, flowers overflowed, but I felt none of it. I only felt the emptiness left behind. A week later, we gathered in Mr. Caldwell's office, our father's lifelong attorney. He read the will carefully, deliberately, as if weighing every word before he spoke. The money was divided among charities, trusts, and us. But the mansion, that was different. To whichever child demonstrates responsibility, loyalty, and vision to carry forward my legacy, the mansion shall belong. The final decision rests with me, Mr. Caldwell, executor of this will, he said. Gideon leaned back smugly. Obviously, this is mine, he muttered. Liora rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed. I remained silent, trying to hide the unease twisting in my stomach. From that moment, the battle began. Gideon wasted no time asserting himself. He began hosting gatherings at the mansion, inviting business partners, flaunting his plans for the estate. He wanted to make sure everyone knew he was the rightful heir. Liora, however, had a different approach. She constantly complained about the mansion, claiming it was a burden. She said she wanted to sell it and use the money to start a new life far away. But deep down, I knew she was only thinking about escape, not preservation. And me. I wasn't interested in turning the mansion into a trophy or a business venture. I wanted to protect my mother's legacy, the piano she had played, the gardens she had nurtured, the memories of our childhood. But my siblings didn't care about that. At first, the arguments were subtle. Snide comments at dinner, rolling eyes, whispered accusations. But soon, the tension escalated into full-blown conflict. Voices bounced off marble walls. Accusations flew like daggers. You've always been father's favorite, Isla, Gideon snapped one night, slamming his fist on the table. Don't think I don't see how he looked at you. But this house, it's mine. I'm the eldest. Liora shot back, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Neither of you deserve it. You're blinded by father's favoritism. I should sell it and finally be free from this suffocating legacy. I felt my heart break. The siblings I once played hide-and-seek with in these very halls were now turning into enemies. But I wasn't about to let them destroy everything my mother and father had built, not without a fight. So I started planning. I began digging into Gideon's life first. I knew he had a weakness for gambling and reckless investments. Finding proof wasn't hard: bank statements, casino slips, and messages from lenders. Liora was trickier. She hid her secrets well, but everyone has one weakness. Hers was her desperation to escape, her reliance on a man with ulterior motives. I found letters, secret messages, plans she had made to sell the mansion quietly, even before Mr. Caldwell could finalize the decision. I didn't confront them immediately. I watched, patiently, like a predator studying its prey. Timing was everything. The smallest mistake from them would give me the leverage I needed. The first major confrontation happened during what was supposed to be a family dinner at the mansion. Mr. Caldwell was present, observing silently, his piercing gaze making it feel like we were under a microscope. Gideon boasted about his future plans, Liora rolled her eyes, and I stayed calm, biding my time. When the shouting reached its peak, I finally spoke. "Enough," I said, my voice steady. "If Father wanted us to prove ourselves worthy, then let's stop pretending. Because the truth is, Gideon, you're drowning in debt. I have the records, the casino slips, the bank statements, and messages from men you owe money to." Gideon's face drained of color. How did you? I turned to Liora. "And you, Liora, do you want me to read the letters you wrote to your lover, plotting to sell this mansion before the ink on the will was dry?" Her mouth fell open. She whispered, "No, you wouldn't." I dropped the stack of papers onto the polished table. Evidence that could not be denied. "This mansion isn't about power or money," I said, my voice rising. "It's about family, about legacy. And if either of you truly cared about father or mother, you would know that." The room fell silent. Mr. Caldwell's eyes narrowed, studying us carefully. Gideon's fists clenched at his sides, his face red with fury. Leora's lips trembled, tears forming in her eyes. I knew in that moment, this wasn't just about the mansion. This was about who would survive after everything burned. And I wasn't about to lose. Over the next few weeks, I began orchestrating a plan. I documented every hidden debt, every secret meeting, every lie. I recorded conversations discreetly, saved emails, screenshots, even physical evidence that could not be ignored. Every move my siblings made, I turned into a step in my strategy. Gideon started getting restless. He tried subtle intimidation tactics, confronting me in hallways, whispering threats during family dinners. Liora attempted manipulation, pretending to ally with me, planting seeds of doubt in my mind. But I saw through all of it. Then came the perfect opportunity. The mansion was hosting a weekend gathering for friends and distant relatives, a supposedly neutral event. Everyone was under one roof, unaware of the storm about to hit. I had coordinated with Mr. Caldwell in secret, sharing my findings, giving him the full picture. I wanted him to witness the truth firsthand, without bias, without hesitation. Dinner began normally. Laughter, polite conversation, glasses clinking. Gideon made his usual boasts about expansion plans, while Liora rolled her eyes but kept her mouth shut. And I waited, patiently. When the moment was right, I stood up. "It's time to stop pretending," I said. My voice carried through the grand hall, quieting the chatter. "Gideon, Liora, your secrets, your schemes, your lies, they are all here. I've documented everything. And Mr. Caldwell has seen it too." Gideon's face turned ashen. Leora's eyes widened, a mix of fear and disbelief. Mr. Caldwell remained silent, his expression unreadable, but I could see the flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes. The tension was unbearable. Every guest, sensing the shift, fell silent. The air seemed to thicken, almost pressing down on us. "This isn't just about who inherits a house," I continued, my voice firm. "It's about trust, loyalty, and the legacy of our family. You failed on all counts, and the mansion will go to the one who proves worthy, as Father intended. Not the greedy, not the deceitful, but the one who values family above everything." That night, for the first time, I felt the gravity of my actions. The siblings I loved were now my adversaries. But I also knew I had done what was necessary to protect what mattered most. And so began the true battle, a game of patience, revenge, and strategy that would stretch over months, testing loyalty, exposing secrets, and forever changing the Hawthorne family. The tension that night didn't dissipate. It only grew. After confronting Gideon and Liora in front of our extended family and Mr. Caldwell, the mansion felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I could sense their eyes on me constantly, Gideon's burning with rage, Liora's flickering between fear and defiance. Every step I took, every word I uttered, felt like navigating a minefield. I returned to my room, the grand bedroom that once felt like a sanctuary, and sat by the window overlooking the snow-draped gardens. I thought about the childhood we once shared here, hiding under tables during hide-and-seek, our mother's laughter echoing through the halls, my father's stern gaze softened by rare moments of affection. Those memories were my anchor, my reason to continue the fight. The next morning, the war escalated. Gideon, still reeling from the public exposure, tried a new tactic: intimidation. He started shadowing me everywhere in the mansion, making thinly veiled threats under the guise of brotherly advice. "You need to understand, Isla," he said one morning in the library, leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed. "This is bigger than any of us. You think you can just uncover my mistakes and walk away unscathed? Every move you make will have consequences." I looked up from the papers I was reviewing, financial documents, personal correspondences, hidden debts, and smiled faintly. "I'm not scared, Gideon. I'm prepared. Every consequence I face has been accounted for." Liora, on the other hand, employed a subtler approach. She attempted to sway Mr. Caldwell, whispering doubts about my intentions. "Isla is clever, yes," she said softly during a meeting, "but she's impulsive. She doesn't understand the pressures of managing an estate like this. Maybe the mansion would be better under someone else's guidance." Mr. Caldwell, ever observant, didn't respond immediately. He simply nodded slightly, as though absorbing the information, filing it away for a future moment. That moment, I knew, could either be my salvation or my undoing. I realized then that the mansion wasn't just a battleground of money, it was a war of wills, of perception, of strategy. I needed to be smarter, more precise, and utterly patient. Over the next few weeks, I began implementing my plan. First, I consolidated all the evidence I had gathered: Gideon's gambling debts, secret loans, and risky investments, Liora's hidden correspondences and plans to sell the mansion under the table. Each piece was documented meticulously, catalogued, and cross-verified. I needed Mr. Caldwell to have no doubt about the truth. Next, I started manipulating small situations within the mansion to expose their weaknesses publicly but subtly. During a midweek dinner, I left financial ledgers on the dining table where Gideon would inevitably see them. He picked up one, scanning the pages quickly before realizing what I had done. His face paled. He knew I had caught him, and he knew I was planning my next move carefully. Liora, observing the exchange, tried to interject. "Isla, you shouldn't." But I ignored her. I let the tension simmer. Let them stew in their own guilt and paranoia. One evening, I received an anonymous tip through a secure email account I had set up for my investigation. The sender claimed to have witnessed Gideon meeting with a known lender late at night, discussing an unpaid loan and arranging clandestine payments. I didn't reply. I saved the message, using it as further ammunition in my arsenal. Weeks turned into months. The mansion, once a place of family unity, now felt like a prison. Every hallway echoed with whispered arguments, slammed doors, and hurried footsteps. Staff members avoided the main floor during heated exchanges, and even Mr. Caldwell grew visibly tense, knowing the family dynamics were spiraling out of control. I began setting subtle traps. I would leave Liora alone in the library with letters she thought I hadn't found, only to ensure Mr. Caldwell discovered them later. Gideon, convinced that I was unaware of his secret loans, started slipping up, forgetting to delete certain messages or receipts. Then came the turning point, the weekend gala. It was supposed to be a celebration of our father's life and his accomplishments. Relatives, friends, and business associates from across the country gathered in the grand hall. But beneath the polished appearances, the air was thick with deceit, tension, and unspoken threats. I arrived early, ensuring everything was in place. The ledgers, letters, and evidence were hidden in plain sight. Cameras discreetly positioned in corners would record interactions that would later serve as undeniable proof. Mr. Caldwell arrived shortly after, his presence calm but commanding. Gideon made his entrance, confidence radiating from him as he greeted guests, unaware that the foundation of his empire was about to crumble. Liora followed, her expression carefully neutral, though her eyes flickered nervously in my direction. As dinner progressed, I orchestrated the final act. I ensured that a discussion about the estate would take center stage, subtly guiding conversations and placing certain documents where they would be inevitably discovered. And then, the moment arrived. I stood, my voice carrying through the hall. Family and friends, I'd like to address an important matter regarding our father's legacy. The room fell silent. All eyes were on me. Over the past few months, I've discovered truths that affect not just the mansion, but the very integrity of our family. Gideon and Liora have both made choices that betray the trust of our parents and the values they instilled in us. Gideon's face hardened. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. Let me continue. I presented the evidence, carefully, deliberately, and without exaggeration. Gideon's gambling debts, secret loans, and manipulations were laid bare. Liora's letters and clandestine plans to sell the estate without proper disclosure were revealed. The reactions were instantaneous. Gideon's jaw tightened, fists clenching. Liora's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and fear. Mr. Caldwell observed everything, occasionally glancing at his notes, absorbing every detail. You both have failed, I said, my voice unwavering. Failed to honor the legacy of our father, failed to respect the memories of our mother, and failed to uphold the principles of this family. The mansion will not be handed over to the greedy or deceitful, but to the one who demonstrates loyalty, responsibility, and the ability to preserve what matters most. The room was tense. Silence hung like a heavy curtain. Even the guests seemed to hold their breath, sensing the gravity of the situation. In the days that followed, Gideon and Liora grew increasingly paranoid. Every conversation was monitored. Every step within the mansion felt calculated, as if one wrong move would expose them further. I had set the stage, and now I watched them falter under their own misdeeds. One evening, Gideon confronted me in the study. You think this is over, Isla? You think presenting a few documents will ruin me? You're playing a dangerous game. I remained calm. It's not a game, Gideon. It's justice. And every move I make is backed by truth, evidence, and the support of Mr. Caldwell. You can deny it all you want, but the mansion isn't yours until you can prove yourself worthy. Meanwhile, Liora attempted to manipulate social perceptions, planting rumors among the staff and distant relatives that I was acting out of spite. But each attempt backfired, as Mr. Caldwell had already verified my evidence independently. As months passed, the mansion became a war zone of strategy, deception, and psychological maneuvering. I orchestrated situations that forced Gideon to reveal further financial mismanagement. I subtly encouraged Liora to make choices that exposed her impulsiveness and disregard for the family legacy. Every misstep they made strengthened my position. Then came the final moment, a formal review with Mr. Caldwell, conducted in the main hall. We were the only family present, aside from him. The room was silent, the atmosphere electric with tension. He reviewed all the evidence I had meticulously collected, cross-referenced it with prior records, and questioned Gideon and Liora thoroughly. Their arrogance, secrets, and greed were laid bare. It was undeniable. They had failed the test. Finally, Mr. Caldwell turned to me. Isla Hawthorne, based on the documented evidence, testimonies, and your demonstrated responsibility, the mansion shall be awarded to you. It is clear that you are the one capable of preserving the Hawthorne legacy." I felt a rush of relief mixed with sorrow. Relief that justice had been served. Sorrow that the siblings I once loved had become adversaries, unable to reconcile greed with family bonds. Gideon and Liora stood frozen, a mixture of disbelief, anger, and humiliation on their faces. The mansion, once a symbol of unity, had torn them apart completely. That night, as I walked through the grand hall alone, as the night settled over the Hawthorne mansion, a heavy silence hung in every corridor. The confrontation with Gideon and Liora had left an invisible scar on the house, and yet, in that same silence, I found a strange sense of clarity. I had won the mansion, yes, but the victory was hollow. My siblings, once my closest allies in childhood games and shared secrets, were now nothing more than fractured shadows of themselves. I moved slowly through the grand hall, my fingers trailing along the polished oak railing of the staircase. Each photograph on the wall, each relic of my family's history, seemed to gaze back at me, reminding me of the choices that had led us here. It was in that moment I realized that the true cost of inheritance wasn't just the property itself, it was the people you lost along the way. The following morning, Mr. Caldwell called for a formal gathering in the main study. Gideon and Liora had returned after a restless night, their faces pale and drawn, eyes heavy with the weight of their own guilt and humiliation. I could sense the tension radiating off them, but I remained composed, standing tall with the calm confidence that had carried me this far. "Isla," Mr. Caldwell began, "before we finalize everything, I want you to understand the responsibilities that come with this inheritance. The mansion is not merely a residence. It is a legacy. Every decision, every action, every relationship you maintain here will reflect on the Hawthorne name." I nodded solemnly. "I understand, sir. I won't squander what has been entrusted to me." Gideon spoke first, his voice laced with restrained fury. "This isn't fair. You've manipulated everything, Isla. You've played both of us, turned the truth into a weapon. You weren't the eldest. Why should you get what's rightfully mine?" I looked him in the eyes, unwavering. "Rightfully yours? Gideon, you gambled away everything you claimed to protect. You lied, manipulated, and hid your debts. Father's legacy isn't about being firstborn, it's about integrity, responsibility, and respect. Qualities you failed to uphold." Liora tried to interject, her voice quivering. "And me? You think you're better than me? I just wanted freedom. You've turned this house into a trap, Isla. A cage that none of us can escape from." I breathed deeply, choosing my words with care. "Liora, freedom comes with consequences. You made choices that endangered this family, and you have to face them. I'm not here to punish you personally, but I cannot allow recklessness to dictate the future of the mansion." Mr. Caldwell leaned forward, his fingers interlaced on the polished mahogany table. "Your words carry weight, Isla, but so do your actions. You have demonstrated patience, meticulous planning, and a commitment to the family's legacy. These are not traits easily taught. They are proven through consistent judgment, which you have shown repeatedly over the past months." Gideon's jaw clenched. He opened his mouth, closed it again, clearly struggling to maintain composure. Liora's eyes brimmed with tears, a mix of anger, fear, and reluctant acknowledgement. For weeks after that meeting, I worked to restore some sense of order in the mansion. It was not easy. Gideon refused to cooperate, retreating to his private quarters, speaking only when necessary. Liora oscillated between rebellion and resignation, unsure of her place now that the mansion's control was no longer up for debate. Staff members moved cautiously, aware that any misstep could draw scrutiny or spark another confrontation. I knew I had to maintain balance, assert authority without cruelty, protect the estate without fostering resentment. Slowly, I began restoring normalcy. The gardens were pruned and nurtured as my mother had once done. The piano, long neglected, was tuned and polished. Even small details, the curtains, the books, the arrangement of furniture, were attended to with care. I wanted the mansion to breathe again, to feel alive rather than a battleground. Despite my efforts, the shadow of past betrayals lingered. I could sense Gideon watching me from a distance, calculating, waiting for an opportunity to reclaim what he believed was his. Liora attempted minor acts of defiance, like rearranging objects or withholding information about household matters. But each attempt was subtly countered, every move predicted, every mistake noted. Then came the opportunity for reconciliation, or at least the semblance of it. Mr. Caldwell suggested a family meeting, a chance to air grievances and establish a system for cooperation, limited though it might be. I agreed, knowing that the mansion's stability depended on some level of civility between us. The meeting took place in the grand dining room, the same place where so many battles had been waged. I set the tone with a calm, measured introduction. We may not agree on the past, I began, but moving forward, we must establish boundaries, responsibilities, and expectations. The mansion is not a weapon, it is a home, a legacy, and it requires care, not conflict. Gideon's voice was cautious but sharp. I will follow rules, yes, but do not think this changes how I feel about the decisions that were made. I am still the firstborn, and I will always challenge you when necessary. I nodded. Acknowledged. Challenges are acceptable, but they must be constructive, not destructive. Liora. Liora swallowed, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. I will cooperate. I need to. And I want to. I've realized that freedom isn't about running away, it's about responsibility too. It was a fragile truce, but it was a start. I knew it would take months, possibly years, to repair the fractured dynamics of our family. But at least the immediate threat to the mansion and its legacy had been neutralized. In the weeks that followed, life within the mansion began to stabilize. Gideon maintained his presence but kept interactions minimal and professional. Liora contributed to household management and even began engaging with the gardens and archives, finding some solace in preservation rather than escape. I continued overseeing all aspects of the estate, balancing authority with care, ensuring that neither sibling could undermine the work we had collectively inherited. The mansion itself began to transform, not into a battleground, but into a reflection of careful stewardship. The halls echoed with quiet activity, footsteps purposeful rather than tense. The garden bloomed, the library flourished with organized records, and even the hidden corners of the estate were attended to with methodical precision. Despite the stabilization, the lessons of betrayal and revenge were never far from my mind. I remained vigilant, understanding that the instincts which had saved the mansion once might be needed again. Trust, once broken, is never fully restored, and the scars left by greed and deception lingered in every glance, every word exchanged between siblings. One late evening, I found myself in the study, reviewing the estate's finances and planning improvements to the property. Mr. Caldwell entered silently, his presence commanding but not intrusive. "You've handled everything remarkably, Isla," he said quietly, settling into the chair opposite mine. "Few could have managed what you did. It's one thing to inherit a property, but another to inherit a legacy of discord and emerge unscathed." I allowed myself a small smile. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. But I didn't do it alone. I had to anticipate every move, every manipulation. It wasn't about winning. It was about survival and preservation." He nodded. "And you've proven that you are worthy of both. Gideon and Liora may resist, but their attempts will be contained. You have established authority not through force, but through strategy, patience, and intelligence." The mansion, once a symbol of greed and conflict, had begun to reflect the values my mother had instilled in me: care, patience, and attention to detail. I walked through the halls, touching the banisters, feeling the texture of the walls, inhaling the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of home returning. Yet, the victory carried a bittersweet undertone. Gideon and Liora, my own blood, had been forced into submission. The bonds of childhood, once so strong, had been severed. The mansion had been won, but at the cost of innocence, trust, and the simplicity of family love. In the following months, I focused on establishing routines and responsibilities within the mansion. I held weekly meetings with Gideon and Liora, setting clear expectations and ensuring transparency in all financial and managerial decisions. Conflicts arose occasionally, but they were minor and manageable. I had learned to anticipate their tendencies, to predict their maneuvers, and to respond decisively but fairly. The mansion began to flourish under my guidance. The gardens bloomed with vibrant colors, reflecting the care and attention I poured into them. The library, once neglected and dusty, became a center for research, family history, and cultural preservation. Rooms that had been battlegrounds of argument and tension now carried a sense of purpose, order, and quiet dignity. Despite the outward peace, I remained wary. I knew that Gideon and Liora's resentment simmered beneath the surface, ready to resurface if given the chance. I maintained careful surveillance, subtle checks, and documented everything meticulously. The mansion's legacy depended not only on the care of the property, but on the containment of human weaknesses that threatened to destroy it. In time, even the staff adjusted to the new dynamics. They respected my authority, recognized my fairness, and understood that the mansion's stability depended on their cooperation as well. Trust, once rebuilt carefully, began to permeate the household, though always tempered by caution and experience. Reflecting on the journey, I realized the mansion had been more than just a house. It was a crucible, testing the bonds of family, the limits of ambition, and the resilience of morality. It had exposed the greed, deceit, and vulnerability of those I loved, forcing me to act not out of malice, but out of necessity. And in the end, the mansion belonged to me, not merely because I had inherited it, but because I had earned it. Through strategy, patience, and unwavering resolve.